assessment and information on the situation in order to respond.
And on the aftershocks, as a general rule, we cannot ask everybody to do the same. Due to the aftershocks, there could be buildings that could be damaged once again. And there are people who are inside a strong, robust building, and it could be safer to remain inside the building. So it's really case by case. But at any rate, there are possibility of aftershocks. So therefore, those of you who are inside the buildings, please make sure that you do not be hit by furniture collapsing, even inside strong buildings. And if you're worried about the safety of the buildings, please try to evacuate to a safer place nearby. At any rate, please stay calm and act calmly. Going forward, would you be asking for support from the overseas? Well, already, partially, we have been having some offers to cooperate from foreign countries to the foreign ministry. So such information is now being sorted out. And well, we've already had the earthquake a few hours ago. But first of all, it is the self-defense forces as well as our police who are trying to cope with the situation. But we are prepared to ask for future requests for relief from foreign countries. 7 years ago, we had earthquake in Niigata.
Okay, that was Yukio Edeno, Chief Cabinet Secretary. Earlier on, of course, Prime Minister Naoto Kan speaking. 2 hours and 25 minutes.
All right, listening there to NHK Television, and there the Japanese Cabinet Secretary pretty much advising people what they need to do if they live along the coastline, pleading for people to move to higher ground if at all possible, to evacuate that area because more tsunamis are coming in across there. And of course saying that if you're in a building, there's more aftershocks to come, so just beware of any furniture in those buildings. And if you feel a need to, evacuate that area. Want to bring in Anna Coren now, who's in Hong Kong, who's going to join me now as we continue our coverage of this 8.9 earthquake that has hit Japan. And now, of course,
yes, I think the problem is that the phones are very jammed. Everyone's on their phone, on their mobile. Even the landlines are a bit difficult now. I mean, I was able to get through to my family in the first half hour after this happened. They were all fine. But, you know, the system, I think, is overloaded. I suspect that it's that rather than damage to the telecoms infrastructure. So, you know, there will be a lot of anxiety, particularly for people who have family in these northeastern coastal areas.
Indeed, and of course what's interesting is in the midst of this and all these aftershocks that you're experiencing, and we've been reporting you know, after the initial 8.9, we've heard of a 6.4, a 6.8, that even so people are still able to watch their television. The power lines don't appear to have, the downing of those power lines don't appear to have necessarily had a big impact, certainly in the Tokyo area, as you point out.
No, Tokyo, from what I can tell, is fine. The damage is really, if I look out my window, I can't see any damage. There's a big oil fire in a steel refinery to the east. We're hearing reports of an older, a pre-war building where there was some kind of school graduation ceremony going on, where a ceiling fell in and some people were injured. But I don't think Tokyo is the problem.
Indeed. You feel comfortable, though, there on the 7th floor to remain there rather than to add to the people trying to make their way home. Presumably, it took a little while for you to come to that decision.
Not really. I mean, this building seems to be quite solid. By and large, I mean, if we look at what seems, you know, still to have been a more destructive earthquake in Kobe in 1995, by and large, modern buildings, you know, built after 1980 at least, remain standing. They might have been badly damaged and rendered uninhabitable. They might have had to knock them down and rebuild them. But, you know, fingers crossed, and I hope these aren't famous last words, the big modern buildings absorb the shock. The danger, I mean, personally, I always feel that the danger is being on the streets, where the kind of air conditioning units, the masts that are loosely moored to the top of some of these buildings could come crashing down. So I'd be staying here for the time being.
Yeah, I totally understand that. And of course, as we reported there, Naoto Kan, Japan's Prime Minister, announcing that he will head up this newly organised emergency response headquarters. How efficient is that likely to be? And tell us, because presumably in the past a similar headquarters would have been set up. Would that be right or not?
Yeah, after the Kobe quake in 1995, the government came in for a lot of criticism, rightly, because their response was very slow and poorly coordinated. I think a lot of lessons were learned from that. Certainly when I was out just now on the streets talking to people, it was striking, how well prepared everyone was. Lots of people had hard hats next to their desks, which they're wearing out on the street. And, although we can't make a judgment yet, my assumption is that the government is certainly better prepared for this one than it was 16 years ago. The government will have lots to prove, but at this stage, I think everyone is just at the stage of trying to establish exactly what's happened and how bad the damage is. I mean, these pictures we're seeing, from the coastal areas are very dramatic, but they're quite a narrow angle you're looking at. I'm not clear yet how far inland this damage has gone, or whether we're just talking about a few hundred meters at the very fringes of the sea. I mean, Japan is not a country like Indonesia. It's a very rich country, and it's got a very active construction industry which for decades has been concreting over the coastlines to a rather depressing extent. But what that means is that the coast is by and large pretty well protected. There are lots of kind of areas of open coast, certainly not near towns. So plenty of these places do have seawalls in place. They have tetrapods, which absorb the tides. And a big earthquake in Japan doesn't come as a surprise to anyone. So there's certainly no excuse for not being prepared.
Absolutely. Richard Lloyd Parry, Asia editor for The Times, thank you so much for talking with us and explaining your experience there as this 8.9 earthquake struck where you are, and you have made the decision to stay safely in that building. Just for a moment, let's listen in to NHK coverage, NHK TV there in Japan, and listen to what they're able to report at this point.
Heads of the various political parties, our Secretary General and our Vice Deputy President are seeking cooperation from other parties and the other political parties.